A typical oversight hearing, or that was the assumption. The Senate hearing room maintained its quiet atmosphere, cameras rolling, journalists getting comfortable for yet another routine end-of-year session. 3 seats away from the committee chair sat Senator Elizabeth Warren, a closed blue folder positioned in front of her. Simple, ordinary, unassuming. At the witness table, Pam Bondi sat with her hands clasped confidently. She had experience in this setting, testifying, fielding questions, and maneuvering through congressional examination. She appeared well prepared, composed, ready. Little did anyone in that room know what was about to unfold, except for Warren, because within that blue folder lay something catastrophic: wire transfer documents, encrypted emails, shell company paperwork, foreign bank routing numbers, and 83 seconds of inquiry that would reveal everything. If this channel is new to you, stay with me. What you're about to see is a masterclass in congressional interrogation. No theatrics, no grandstanding, just facts, documents, and a witness who went completely silent when the evidence landed on the table. This is how corruption gets exposed in real time. The opening move: Warren opened the folder. Her first question seemed routine, almost boring. Miss Bondi, during the period spanning March through November of this year, were any communications from foreign nationals received by you concerning policy matters within your official duties? Standard protocol. Nothing unusual. Bondi shifted forward slightly. Senator, official channels bring me hundreds of communications each month. Council reviews and logs everyone as regulations require. Professional, practiced, confident. Warren's eyes stayed on the folder. My inquiry focuses specifically on communications that come from Russian nationals or intermediaries linked to Russia. Notice the specificity. Warren didn't repeat her question. She refined the focus. Russian nationals, Russian intermediaries, not general communications, specific ones. Bondi's reply: not to my knowledge, Senator. 4 words. A straightforward denial, officially recorded. Warren flipped the page. Does the name Baltic Holdings Limited ring a bell for you? It's a company registered in Nicosia, Cyprus. Observe what happens next. The pause, half a second longer than Bondi's prior responses. Not much, but sufficient. I would need to review my records. From not to my knowledge to I'd need to check my records in half a minute. The first sign of vulnerability. Warren didn't wait. Allow me to provide assistance. The bomb dropped. She raised a single document. And then she destroyed Bondi's testimony with surgical precision. 4 wire transfers to a Delaware limited liability company were flagged by Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. The registration shows your former law partner's name. Baltic Holdings was the source entity. The processing intermediary was Redumu Banka, located in Riga, Latvia. Stop right there. Let's break down what Warren just said. 1. Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, flagged these transfers. That means they triggered money laundering alerts. 2. A Delaware LLC, the favorite vehicle for hiding beneficial ownership in the United States. 3. Registered to Bondi's former law partner, direct connection established. 4. Money came from Baltic Holdings in Cyprus, a known offshore secrecy jurisdiction. 5. Processed through Redumu Banka in Latvia, a bank already on Treasury's radar for Russian money laundering. This wasn't a random payment. This was an intricate structure for laundering money, and Warren had the evidence. The transfer dates were March 14th, April 22nd, June 8th, and September 3rd of 2025. 4 distinct transfers, not a single error. A pattern had emerged, a connection. Then came the figures. Warren presented them slowly and purposely. $178,000, $223,000, $251,000, $215,000. The total, $847,000. Bondi's hands remained clasped, stiff. The confident posture vanished. Warren proceeded, calm and unwavering. The LLC was dissolved on November 29th. That was 18 days ago. Would you like to change your earlier response? 18 days ago, just before this hearing, just when Bondi would have anticipated questions. No denial was offered. No explanation was provided. No clarification was made, just silence. The document was placed face up on the table. A staff member wheeled a monitor into view. The FinCEN report appeared on screen for everyone to see. Sender identities redacted, but the dollar figures exact. Wire transfer codes, correspondent bank chains, the money trail clear as day. Riga to Tallinn to Wilmington, Delaware, $847,000. The timeline trap. Warren wasn't done. She just established the money. Now she was going to connect it to policy. Miss Bondi, on June 9th of 2025, the day following the third transfer, your attendance at a closed-door Senate Banking Committee meeting regarding sanctions enforcement policy is documented. Can you recall that meeting? This is the skill of a prosecutor. Establish the payment. Then show what happened immediately after. Bondi tried to deflect. Multiple meetings occurred during that time frame. Warren didn't let her escape. This specific meeting focused on the stricter correspondent banking regulations. The emphasis was on Baltic financial institutions identified by Treasury for their involvement in Russian money laundering. Your stance was against further limitations. Does this jog your memory? Read that once more. The day after Bondi received $251,000 from a Latvian bank involved in processing Russian funds, she opposed restrictions on that very type of bank during a Senate committee meeting. That isn't a mere coincidence. That constitutes a quid pro quo. Bondi reached for her glass of water. Her hand paused briefly. She didn't take a sip. She set it back down. I offered counsel on regulatory feasibility. Counsel on regulatory feasibility. That's the answer when you can't deny you did it, so you try to make it sound legitimate. Warren turned another page. An encrypted email reached you 4 days prior to that meeting. The originating address traced to a server in Tallinn, Estonia. The subject line contained no text. A single PDF attachment titled Correspondent Banking Impact Assessment Confidential, encrypted. No subject line. Confidential document. 4 days before the meeting. Warren looked up. Projected revenue loss figures for 3 Latvian banks appeared in that document. Rietumu Banka was among them. The same bank processing Bondi's payments sent her a confidential analysis of how new sanctions would hurt their business. Then she went to Congress and argued against those sanctions. Was that communication disclosed to the committee? When you provided testimony, were the offshore transfers disclosed? Silence. Complete silence. Warren's voice stayed level. The financial institution handling your associate's payments was the same one you defended during your testimony in the Senate, and you failed to notice this link. The question was not intended for a real answer. Warren was aware of the response. So was everyone who was watching. Bondi finally replied, I was not aware of that connection at the time. In other words, I got caught. The policy advocacy. Warren picked up another document. On September 4, 2025, the day after the fourth transfer, an email was sent from you to a Deputy Assistant Secretary at the Treasury. The same pattern emerged. Money comes in. Policy advocacy follows. The email's subject was, Current Review of Proposed FinCEN Enforcement Expansion. You were requesting a postponement of new reporting requirements. Shell companies obtaining foreign payments via Baltic correspondent banks were specifically referenced. She wasn't just opposing sanctions in general. She was specifically trying to protect the exact mechanism being used to pay her. Warren read directly from the email. These requirements risk overcapitalizing enforcement resources on low-risk technical violations while creating compliance burdens that could destabilize legitimate cross-border business structures. The paper settled on the table. Warren's voice hardened. Low-risk technical violations. That's your characterization of $847,000 in Russian-linked transfers to an undisclosed LLC. Low risk. $847,000 from Russian-linked sources through Baltic banks flagged for money laundering is low risk. Bondi's breathing slowed. Her hands remained clasped together. Her gaze was fixed ahead. She didn't reply. Warren persisted. What I referred to was the broader regulatory policy. You referred to the specific mechanism that processes your payments. No reply. The encrypted communications. Warren leaned back slightly. This was the decisive point. The encrypted emails are worth discussing. 19 separate messages were received between March and October 2025. The server's origins included Estonia, Cyprus, and a data center in Moscow. 19 encrypted emails from Russian locations. Not one, not two, 19. All of them were protected by encryption. Access was achieved via a VPN service registered in the British Virgin Islands. None of them appeared in any official communication record. This is tradecraft. This is how intelligence operatives communicate. VPNs registered in secrecy jurisdictions. Encrypted messaging. Nothing logged officially. Warren tapped the folder. Metadata is in our possession. IP address ranges are documented. Access timestamps are recorded. Content remains unavailable because encryption key destruction occurred on November 30th, one day following LLC dissolution. Stop. Think about that timeline. November 29th, LLC dissolved November 30th, encryption keys destroyed December 2nd. Bondi amends 5 years of financial disclosure forms. That's not coincidence. That's a coordinated cover-up. Warren leaned forward. Who provided instruction for key destruction, Miss Bondi? Silence. Who was responsible for directing the dissolution of the LLC? There was silence. On December 2nd, just 3 days after the dissolution, 5 years' worth of financial disclosure forms were amended by you. A footnote emerged mentioning consultancy income source under review. However, the specific amounts were not provided and the LLC wasn't named. Furthermore, there was no reference to foreign transfers. He modified 5 years of forms yet failed to specify what the amendments were concerning. That isn't compliance, that's obstruction. Warren glanced up. What led to the amendments on December 2nd? Bondi's fingers tightened slightly. Legal advice. Which legal counsel? External compliance counsel. Give me the name. Watch this. Bondi seemed to hesitate. I would need to, Warren interrupted. Dmitry Vyulov, that's who it is. Miami serves as his base. U.S.-Russian dual nationality. His firm has represented Gazprom Bank subsidiaries across 3 sanctions evasion cases. Justice Department investigation for FARA violations is currently ongoing. The lawyer advising Bondi on her Russian money disclosures is himself under investigation for representing Russian interests without registering as a foreign agent. You cannot make this up. Warren slid a photograph across the table. Bondi's eyes avoided it. Your in-person meeting with him occurred November 28th. An Arlington, Virginia hotel. Duration was 47 minutes. LLC dissolution followed the next day. Encryption key destruction came the day after. 3 days later led to changes in the disclosure forms. On November 28th, a meeting occurred with a lawyer linked to Russia under FARA scrutiny. On November 29th, the limited liability company receiving funds from Russia was dissolved. On November 30th, all encryption keys were ordered to be destroyed. By December 2nd, the disclosure forms were amended. The photograph was returned to Warren. What was discussed during the meeting? Silence ensued. A heavy, profound silence. No one coughed and the rustling of papers was absent. Only the soft hum of the HVAC and the buzzing of overhead monitors could be heard. The final trap. Warren turned to the last page. Miss Bondi, your official schedule lists a calendar entry. I will read. June 7, 2025, 3:30 p.m. Call with BC Strategy. Are you familiar with BC Strategy? Bondi's body tensed. It's a consulting group based in Nicosia. Warren delivered the decisive blow. The address corresponds to Baltec Holdings. The address matches Baltec Holdings. The address matches all 4 wire transfer sender entities. BC Strategy and Baltec Holdings are the same operation. Call duration reached 34 minutes. It preceded by 1 day your receipt of the encrypted policy document. By 2 days it preceded your Senate Banking Committee testimony. No ethics review contains it. No disclosure filing records it. No official communication log shows it. She moved forward. What discussion occurred on that call? Bondi stared at the table. Miss Bondi. Nothing. Warren waited. 10 seconds. 15. A simpler question deserves an answer. Did requests to influence U.S. policy in exchange for monetary payment ever come from Russia or Russian-linked entities? This is it, the direct question, on the record, under oath. Bondi raised her eyes, calm, controlled. Foreign government representation has never been my action. That wasn't my question. Silence resumed. Warren lifted a pen. She made a notation on the folder's top page. The pen was placed back on the table. This committee will issue the subpoenas. We will require all communications between you and any affiliates of Baltec Holdings, BC Strategy, or Dmitry Vyulov. Subpoenas for phone records will follow. We will also request subpoenas for email accounts along with 3 years of financial records. She made it clear that this was not a request but a directive. We will proceed with a referral to the Justice Department for possible FARA violations, false statements, and obstruction. The folder was shut with a soft thud that resonated in the quiet room. In January, you will be required to appear before this committee. You will be subject to oath requirements. Any false statements will result in a criminal perjury referral. Warren stood up, and the hearing room remained silent. Bondi's hands were still resting on the table, her water glass untouched, her eyes fixed forward. The monitors went dark. The aftermath beyond the hearing room, reporters packed the hallway. Marble floors reflected camera flashes. Phones emerged, voices overlapped. Bondi walked through without stopping. No comments, no explanations. That afternoon, subpoenas were issued. January 14, 2026, scheduled for follow-up testimony. Let's summarize what Warren exposed in 83 seconds. $847,000 in wire transfers from Russian-linked sources, processed through a Latvian bank flagged for money laundering, to a Delaware LLC associated with Bondi's legal partner, followed right away by lobbying efforts that safeguard those specific banks. 19 encrypted messages originating from Russian servers, VPN access via offshore territories. LLC terminated just 18 days prior to the hearing. Encryption keys eliminated the following day. Disclosure forms modified 3 days after. A meeting with a lawyer linked to Russia currently under FARA scrutiny. No official records to verify any of this. This is not just coincidental. This represents a well-documented pattern of foreign influence, undisclosed financial transactions, and possible criminal activity. Why this is significant asterisk when a high-ranking government official receives $847,000 from foreign entities and promptly advocates for policies that benefit those sources. That's corruption. When they use encrypted communications and offshore structures to hide it, that's consciousness of guilt. When they dissolve companies and destroy evidence days before congressional testimony, that's obstruction. And when they sit in front of Congress and offer nothing but silence, that's checkmate. Elizabeth Warren didn't come to that hearing to ask questions. She came with answers, documents, timelines, bank records. She built an airtight case and presented it in 83 seconds. Pam Bondi had no defense because there is no defense. You can't explain away $847,000 in Russian-linked transfers when the paper trail is that clear. This is what real oversight looks like, not partisan theater, not soundbite fishing, just evidence presented methodically, destroying lies with facts. And the silence, that silence is the sound of corruption exposed. The unanswered questions currently, we still lack answers to. What was the content of those 19 encrypted emails? Who else participated in this plot? What additional policies did Bondi support after receiving payments? How much more money was exchanged that we are unaware of? What did Dmitry Vyulov communicate to her during that 47-minute meeting? We remain in the dark because Bondi eliminated the evidence. However, we do have some information. We know the funds were real. We know the advocacy took place. We know there was a cover-up. On January 14, 2026, Bondi is scheduled to testify under oath. If she lies, she will face criminal perjury charges. If she tells the truth, it's likely that she'll confront FARA violations, false statements, and obstruction charges. She is in a precarious position. And that's exactly what happens when someone as prepared as Elizabeth Warren gets you in the witness chair with a blue folder full of receipts. 83 seconds. $847,000 exposed. Complete silence. That's not just a bad hearing. That's a career-ending implosion. If you believe government officials should be held accountable for foreign influence and corruption, stay informed. These hearings don't get the coverage they deserve. The mainstream media will sweep this under the rug in a news cycle or two. However, the documents remain. The evidence stays intact, and Elizabeth Warren will continue her efforts. Follow this channel. We highlight what others overlook. We trace the money, reveal the deceptions, and insist on accountability, because it shouldn't only take 83 seconds to uncover such deep-rooted corruption. Yet sometimes when the evidence is this compelling, that's all it requires. Warren was ready. Bondi was left exposed. The American public had a right to see this. This is merely the start. January 14th is approaching. More subpoenas are on the way. More evidence will surface. As for Pam Bondi, she offers nothing but silence.